I've just completed another Master Chassis Lightsaber commission. This is the Baylon Skoll from KR Sabers, installed with the Gothry Designs Master Chassis.
Welcome. Core stability at 93.138%.
This was a pretty fun Master Chassis to install because it was heavily based on the Ray Master Chassis I've completed quite a few of. So I actually got to implement quite a lot of what I did in the Ray Master Chassis, and improve upon them a little bit. You'll get to see what I mean when I show it off. But before I do, please be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And as always, if you want to commission a lightsaber build from me, whether it be something like this, or something a lot more simple, you can contact me on Instagram, the link is down in the description, or on my new website. The link for that is also in the description, or you could just type in averycastillo.com. It's pretty easy. So with all that out of the way, let's get right into showing off this Master Chassis. So this is a Baylon Skoll Lightsaber that I installed with the Master Chassis. You can actually get both of these over at TheSaberArmory. You could either get the hilt on its own with no electronics or chassis, or you can get the DIY hilt kit like I did here. Of course, you don't have to get a Master Chassis. He also has Eco Crystal Chamber Chassis, which is just a plastic chassis with some plastic crystal chamber parts, not nearly as intricate as what you see here, or just a basic Eco Chassis, which is just a plain, regular plastic chassis to make this thing work. And actually my customer wanted a Ray Master Chassis, but right now, those are not being made. The lightsaber is actually discontinued by TheSaberArmory, and I don't know if they're going to make it again. So, I had a look and found that the Baylon Skoll Master Chassis Lightsaber was actually very, very close to the Ray Master Chassis in terms of design, and in terms of the accent lights that I can fit in it. Since it's so close to the Ray, pretty much structurally exactly the same, I'll be able to put in all of the same things that I did there. Which is what I did. And there's actually a few design elements that are way better in this one than the Ray Master Chassis, but I'll go over that later when I start talking about the install. But for now, let's have a quick look over the chassis and the lightsaber, and then I'll show you how it works. This lightsaber is a funny one because it always looks like, to me, this is the face of a chicken or like a rooster or something. And then, you know, we've got that face here. I don't know if you can really tell in this lighting, but it's got two slots, and then the slots of these look like eyeballs. Such an interesting lightsaber design. But to get started, you just turn on the kill switch here. And then I have it set up to be pretty similar to the Ray Master Chassis in terms of the lighting sequence, but I changed it all to be red and changed a couple of colors in order to make it match the Baylon Skoll Lightsaber. You can see the crystals pulsing there. That's what I have it set up to do when it's on idle. And then, let's take a quick look at the soundboard. I forgot to show that to you. I'm using all black wires for this lightsaber build so you don't see any of them and it doesn't ruin the aesthetic. Now, I'm using a CFX soundboard, specifically one with a magnetic sensor, so the 9-axis CFX. That's so that we can do this.
Welcome. Core stability at 93.138%.
That's what I like to call force activation.
Ready. Core stability confirmed. Maintenance mode deactivated. Crystal core shielded. Goodbye.
So it's quite loud. I won't be doing that too often, hopefully. But you kind of got to look at all the sequences there. I'll go over it a little bit more now, I suppose. So force activation is just, you use a magnetic ring, and then I had to program this, well, not really program it, I had to set up the magnetic field, and then set up the parameters to allow a certain degree of magnetism to trigger it. And then it just turns on the lightsaber. It doesn't turn it off, you have to do the button or gesture controls to turn it off, but it turns it on, and it's pretty fun with crystal chamber lightsabers like this. So, when it turns on, it has a very long sequence, since this is a very long, I guess, font. This font in particular is meant to be for a chassis that's not inside of a lightsaber, and then I set this up with chassis detection, which I did a little bit of a more creative thing to make it work, since this is not at all the same as the Ray lightsaber in how it functions inside the hilt. This one is actually a fully set chassis. It doesn't have any button module in the top or anything. So this goes into the lightsaber, and then the blade goes directly onto it. So it doesn't have a section to do chassis detection in the hilt. So I set something up that I'll show you later. But let's turn this on and show off some of the effects.
Welcome. Core stability at 93.138%. Ready.
So there you can see it's all
flux.
standard now. This is their resting sequence. So I've got red and orange circling in the turbine section. I set up an accent strip to pulse up and down throughout this middle section. You can really see it here.
Ready.
It's pulsing up and down. That's probably my favorite part of this entire
Your
build.
command.
You've got the crystal light. Up top you've got red, blue, and green. And then of course you've got the NeoPixel connector up there. And down at the bottom near the speaker I have 3 pixels doing red, green, and blue. Mainly all the primary colors so that they mix together, you know?
Maintenance instructions, sir.
And then you can turn it off by either doing gesture controls or the button.
Goodbye.
And I don't know if you noticed, but when I turn it off, it sort of floods it with red light, like it's coming from the crystal, and then it pulses, I think it was blue, green, purple, and then yellow, orange, and red, and then it all goes back into the crystal. So when you turn on the lightsaber, everything shoots out like the crystal's powering the entire chassis, and then when you turn it off, everything sort of goes back to the crystal. I'll do it one more time so you can see it.
Welcome. Core stability at 93.138%.
Goes out, green goes out, and then red comes back in, and then red goes back out to power the whole chassis, and then we're back into our resting mode. And then when you turn it off,
goodbye.
Sometimes there's a much slower off sound. It depends on which sound the font sets up when you turn it off. But when it does the slower one, you can see the effect a lot slower. Whoops. Slipped out of my hand there, and the battery popped out when I did that. But this thing is incredibly sturdy. Like, I've got it glued down in basically every single portion you could possibly have it glued down. So this thing is not going anywhere unless it's mistreated super badly by like shipping handlers or something. But even then, this thing's gonna hold up, because I had some experience with the last Ray lightsaber that I shipped out to someone. It wasn't when I shipped it, but I shipped it to somewhere and then he had it shipped to him, I think. But somewhere along the line, to get from the second point after I shipped it to him, it got messed up in the mail because it was shipping out of the country, and they messed with it a ton. But it still worked. It was just a little bit loose because it got knocked around quite a bit, but you just put a little bit of dabs of Loctite in certain places and then it'll tighten itself back up. But this time I tried to glue tons and tons of places together so that even if that happens, hopefully it won't fall apart. So I'll go into more detail about the install later. Let's put it inside the hilt and then I'll show it off. You basically just unscrew the grip here. And then it has a guide screw system, so if you see here, it's got a screw on the side and a screw on the side. You want it to line up with these channels. It goes down here and then it goes to the side, on both sides. And there's really only one way it'll go in, it won't go in any other way, so you pretty much just have to find it until it goes, and then you just push it in and twist it. You could hear there the chassis detect kicked in. I'll take it out and put it back in so you can hear it again. So that's the disconnect sound. I also have set up 2 other disconnect sounds that the customer can put into the lightsaber. It's basically the font sound. So if you want to change it to any of the 2 that I have there, you can just swap it out. But for now, this is what the disconnect sound and reconnect sound like. There we go. And for those of you who don't know, the chassis detect is in a non-working lightsaber phase when the chassis is not in the lightsaber hilt, and then when you put it in the lightsaber hilt, it switches over to a working lightsaber sound font. So let's quickly show you that. This is the Baylon Skoll or Sun Skull sound font from Kyberphonic Fonts. really nice. And then I will do another disconnect to show you that it switches back to the non-working font.
Welcome. Core stability at 93.138%.
It's quite a long
Ready.
startup sound. Oh. Looks like I triggered it a little early. Sometimes it can glitch out like that.
Welcome.
There we go.
Core stability at 93.138%.
Since it's such a long sound font file to turn on,
Core
it can be really annoying having to wait for that.
activated. Crystal core shielded. Goodbye.
There we go. It's quite loud. So if anything like that happens, just switch it on, or switch it off, switch it on, and it'll fix itself. There's typically not very many. Oh, right. This is not the Ray Master Chassis. You don't put it in the back first. You put it in the front first. But typically this thing doesn't really glitch out that often because it seems like with the newest firmware updates and with how this is set up, there really are not that many places for it to go wrong. But sometimes with the chassis disconnect system, if you trigger things a little bit early, it can confuse it because it's trying to do a lot of things at once, I believe. But anyways, we'll put it back in. And I'll show you how this looks with the blade. Let's zoom out a bit. There we go, that should be good. So this is a very interesting hilt. I'll go over this real quick, what all the screws do. You don't ever really need to touch the screws on the side, which are the guide screws for the chassis. These things seem to be held in with 3M double-sided tape. So I imagine if you pull it, you can pull it off, but try and just leave it as it is. They're very strong, so I don't think you really have to worry too much about it. The pommel, you pretty much never have to take off because it's pretty useless to do so, but you can unscrew it from this section, and you can also unscrew it from one more section down below. Again, you really do not need to do that, and there's tons of space there. Normally the chassis is pushed right up against the bottom, but in this lightsaber it's got so much space. And then up here, sometimes this can be a little loose, I've found. There's really no way to fix that except undoing a bunch of these things, pushing everything as far down as you can and re-screwing it back in, and then that'll keep it tight there for a while, but it'll loosen itself back up. It's very, very slight, like I can't even move it right now really. But these screws up here, if you want to take the button off, you just unscrew this, and then this whole section comes off, and make sure not to lose the springs underneath the button. These two are the blade retention screws, so you have to use both of them. And this holds this top section in alignment and also holds everything down. I mean, of course, these screws also hold this section down and this one as well, but this one I think really is what does it. But you never really have to undo this except if you need to tighten it, like it gets loose or something. But let's take this off. Once again, you can see the chassis disconnect sound, but now it's more of a blade disconnect sound. Let me get a blade. It takes a 1-inch blade. And you can hear the chassis detect kick in, or at this point it's the blade detect. And I'll explain that a little bit later when I go into the install. So I have this set up with all my standard lightsaber fonts and blade profiles, but there's one extra, which is the Baylon Skoll, sound font that I added. Let's move my microphone a bit so I don't deafen you guys. That was the magnetic ring I just set up so I could show you the force activation once again. It took a long time for me to get the force activation fine-tuned like this, but now it's pretty easy to trigger it, even when this hilt is all together. It's very thick metal, so it's a little hard to get it fine-tuned to detect. But I got it to a point where it's really, really good. Works basically every time. And you'll feel it out wherever you need to detect it. So that's pretty much it for force activation. I'll put the ring away. To cycle through the fonts, you can do it two ways. You could either hold it down and go into the font selection menu. You have to hold it down for a few seconds.
Sound bank selection.
And then you scroll.
Red. Blue.
Blue. Or you can do the font gest, which is basically you hold down the activation and clash, but this one can be a little tricky, especially when I'm trying to do it in front of camera here.
Green.
There we go. And it'll go forward 1. Here's green. And with since this is a single button setup, you just press it with a light tap, quick tap, in order to do the auxiliary effects. This is localized blaster blocks, and then you've got localized lockup if you hold it down and clash at the same time. Oops. Sorry, I'm trying not to hit my vise that I have back here. It's very hard for me to set it up when I'm on camera. Can't really see it, but it does change location based on the angle. It also has tip drag. You basically point it down at a 45 or more angle, and then you hold and clash like you were doing the other blade lockup thing. It's very awkward to do while sitting down at this desk. There we go. Tip drag. And then it's got the drift. And then let's cycle through all the fonts if I can. Once again, it's very hard to do all this while sitting on camera like this.
Purple.
There we go.
White.
This I have sort of a flickery dark saber effect.
Yellow.
You are as clumsy as you are stupid.
Sorry if this seems a little violent. I'm just trying to make sure I get it in one good go.
Take your weapon. Strike me down with all of your hatred.
I don't know if you can tell, but this is kind of like a Death Star effect, but it's flowing up.
This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight.
Ah, yes. A Jedi's weapon. Nightfall.
And now we're into all of the standard crystal focus effects. Also, you will be able to hear the motor spinning on the inside. It makes a kind of high-pitched whine noise.
Crystal focus. Crystal focus.
Nebula. Nebula.
Granny.
This hilt is actually a lot easier to trigger the font gest than a lot of the other ones. Probably because it's so big and sturdy.
Off.
You just get a really good clash in on it.
Revolt. Soundboard. The force unleashed through.
So lots of different blade styles and effects here. And colors. This is kind of a Sauron effect with a, you know, like the iris pupil thing. This is a fire blade, so it changes color and sort of flickers. Up and down, I think.
Youngling.
Don't know what that is, maybe like a lightning strike. Rainbow. Absolutely love that font.
This is General Kenobi. Lovely. More smiling faces. Let the negotiations begin. You're wasting your time.
Ancient prophecies.
I believe that's the last one. And this is the non-working font. And this is the Baylon Skoll font. Skoll. It's hard to say that name. And that is basically how the lightsaber works. It's nice and simple. So let's remove this. I'll go over the install and talk about it a little bit. How I got everything to work, and basically how it's all set up. I'm very happy with the blade detection and chassis detection that I set up here. It's very, very fun. See, normally blade detection I'm not really a huge fan of it. It's just not as cool as chassis detection. So I really wanted it to have chassis detection. So what I did was, oh, looks like the pin came out here from all my whacking. There we go, let me just screw this in real quick. If I can, there we go. Screwdriver. There we go, just gotta tighten it with the screwdriver. And there we go. It's all nice and tightened. That's a really cool D-ring, actually. I've never seen a D-ring with a screw to hold it all in, but that's pretty neat. So, the chassis detection is what I was talking about. What I did with that is typically you need a PCB like at the bottom of a blade, or a rotary chassis PCB on the inside of a hilt, like that, in order to trigger the chassis detection. But of course, when you don't have a section in the lightsaber to allow for that, like a rotary chassis PCB, or with thin neck lightsabers, it's a blade side connector and a neopixel connector. When you don't have that, and it's just one chassis just controlling everything, you don't have a way to do chassis detection. So what I did was I set it up on the blade plug. I'll take this out and show it to you. So I set it up on the blade plug. So if you want to have chassis detection, all you need is either the blade inside of the emitter here, or the blade plug. What I did was I set it up with a neopixel connector, or a blade side connector. This was one from the custom saber shop I've had for a very long time. It's not the same diameter as the modern ones, so I had to sand it down quite a bit. I had to go very slowly because you don't want to oversand one side and have it be wonky, because of course you want it to be as centered as possible so you don't misalign the pins. But basically I sanded it down and added a neopixel on the inside. You can't really see it because it's, you know, sort of frosted. But there's a neopixel sitting on top of the blade side connector to light up the blade plug. And then this is what triggers the chassis detection. So if you want chassis detection, all you need to do is have the blade plug in here and tightened, or the blade in there and tightened, and then you put the chassis in and it'll trigger it. Just like that. And you have the best of both worlds. So when the chassis is in, it'll act as a blade detect. But because of that, I didn't want to have my my longer disconnect sound where it makes a hissing and whatever else. That is in the sound font folder. I put it in a folder called Extras inside of the Baylon Skoll and the Crystalline Workshop font. I have extras in there to change up the detection sounds if you want to. But that's how I set up the chassis detection. Now, let's talk about, I guess, the hilt, because there's one thing I did with this hilt other than the blade plug, and that was to sand down the button. On the inside here, it was sticking out ever so slightly, and with the button, with how tall it is, it would either press the button when I put it on the inside, or if I sanded it down a little bit, there was only a tiny little bit of space to press it like that. I wanted it to have a more satisfying and bigger click, so I filed this down, sanded down the bottom until it was a size that I liked. But that was the only thing I did with the hilt. Now the chassis, that's where everything is going on. So let's zoom in. Let's see if I can get through this quickly. This is pretty much the same as the Ray Master Chassis, so I put in all of my accent pixels that I put in on that one, which is a NeoPixel ring up here. And what's cool is this chassis is actually designed for NeoPixel rings now, because the Ray Master Chassis was designed when there weren't NeoPixel rings, and this was designed when there were NeoPixel rings. There we go. And I don't know if I have any extras here to show you. I do. Okay, so I have these. So these are the NeoPixel rings. There are two large ones in this build. There's one at the top and one at this turbine section, both of which have NeoPixel ring holders that they sit in, and diffusion. So there's a little diffusion thing around here. It's a plastic diffuser to diffuse the light through these slits, which is really cool. And there's also a plastic circle thing to diffuse the light there. It also came with a pillar, a plastic pillar to go through the middle in order to shine up the middle from the pixel ring. But I accidentally broke that when I was trying to open up the inside, because the thing with my Ray Master Chassis and this Master Chassis is the extra strip I put right in the middle. Because what I like is I like the accent strip to go up and down right there. That's pretty much what I like to do with these, and it's really difficult to set up, so it also takes a ton of space that could otherwise be used for wires. And typically what I do is I sand down the plastic bit in the middle, and that's what allows me to have more space to put all of that. But when I was doing it this time, it accidentally broke, so I had to design and 3D print a pillar section to put in there, and then I sanded it down. I printed it in clear, I think it was PETG, something like that. But I sanded it down in order to diffuse it, and then luckily I was able to have a bigger inner diameter to allow for the accent strip and the wires. So I've got the NeoPixel ring up top with the diffusion. I've got the NeoPixel crystal ring, not ring, crystal pixel, which I actually didn't use the one it came with because it was a micro pixel. It was this one actually. It was this micro pixel, but it did not, well, it was not this one. It was a different micro pixel, but as you can see with this one, it has a data in and a data out. This is a micro pixel that I would use for this build, but the one it came with did not have a data out, it just had a data in, and that would be a lot harder for me to set up, because I want all of the accent strips set up on the same data line, because with how Crystal Focus is set up, you've got the main data, and then you've got the data 2, which is the LS2 right there. So I wanted all of the accent strips on the LS2, so I needed a data in and a data out on the crystal, so I replaced it, I replaced it with just a standard NeoPixel that I had with a data in and a data out. And it's pretty much what I did with the Ray Master Chassis as well. It just works a lot better for how I set up the pixel strip. You'll see eventually how I make that, but if you want to see roughly how I do that, check out the Ray Master Chassis build that I did semi-recently. The one that I edited together recently, I should say. But, just as an overview, large pixel ring up here, standard crystal pixel there, pixel strip down the middle that I heat shrunk and sanded in order to diffuse it. I 3D printed a tube here and sanded it for more diffusion and wire space. I'm using the a large NeoPixel ring holder that this came with right there that diffuses it. Then I have a 3 pixel strip down here on top of the speaker, or right below the speaker. It's also covered in clear heat shrink and sanded for diffusion. It's a whole lot of pixels, and I think it came out really well. I also replaced the plastic crystal with a quartz crystal that I had. I chose out of a few of them that work, which was pretty cool. And then let's talk about the soundboard. So the soundboard, for anyone who just happens to notice, this is backwards from how I installed it on all my other Ray Master chassis. So the USB port was facing upwards and the SD card was facing that way. That was because that was pretty much the only way I could put this soundboard cover on it in order for it to fit. But for whatever reason with this one, or maybe I just missed it with the other one, it also fits facing downwards, and I think it fits a little bit better because this little orange box sits right between that little arm rib thing and this section. So this sits super flat. So I decided to try it this way and it worked out great. All black wires, always a tricky time, and with all the wires that I use, it's quite the cram foo, as you'd say. And you can see the wires kind of going this way and this way. And with how they're all set up, everything sits flush. So let's talk about some of the differences between this. Why did I take that off? Some of the differences between this lightsaber chassis and the Master chassis. I actually have a Master chassis, so let me grab it and show it to you guys. So this was my first Master chassis I ever made, Master chassis, and what this is based on. And you can really see how similar they are to each other, but there's a lot of differences. So starting from the top, the most obvious thing is the crystal gates. These ones are more empty, these ones have a lot of little design hole things, and it's more flat, covers a lot more. And then inside, you have the motor. The little motor spinning piece is a lot thicker on the Baylon Skoll than it is on the Master chassis. These are way easier to bend. These ones are way sturdier. I like this one a lot. And then coming here, you've got little fins. You don't have any fins here. And then you've got this. This is designed in order to sit against the lip of the chassis here. So, or not the chassis, the hilt. So you can kind of see the lip here. And then once again, got dots, no dots. Pretty much the same soundboard cover. And then the speaker section is a little better on the Baylon Skoll. Maybe because there's more room inside of the hilt. But that's pretty much, oh, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is the little mini rods. So these rods you put in both as a detail and also to hold these pieces to the plastic part underneath. Tiny little tubes that you have to cut. It's an absolute nightmare, but it's pretty cool when they're done. These are actually copper, while on all the other ones they're brass. And I like the copper ones a lot more because it gives a little bit of a accent color in there. And like I do with all of my Master chassis when I have these mini rods, I like to make sure that they have, that they're not squished, that the circles are complete both visually. If you see that, they're visually, you can see the circles still complete right in the middle of the tube, so it's still a tube. And I wanted to make sure that the tube was clear, so that if any light is able to pass through, it can. I don't know if that really matters, but I think it's a really cool addition. It takes a little extra effort, but it's worth it in my opinion. And then with the red wires, I decided with this particular design, since it's got a lot going on, more than the Ray one, I kept it plain red, no black heat shrink, and then I tried to keep it as flush as I could so it doesn't stick out. And I think that really serves this chassis well. And I think that's pretty much all I need to say about this lightsaber. If there's anything that I remember, I'll either cut in with another addition to this video right after I finish talking, or I'll add it to the description of the video. So now talking to my customer, thank you so much for trusting me with this lightsaber. It was a really fun build. I did have a little bit of frustration with the strip there, but that's how it pretty much always goes. It's a hit or miss sometimes, but I was trying a couple new things and it didn't work out. But this was a fun build. Thank you for trusting me. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me once again. And if there's anything you need to know, it's either in the description, in this video, sorry that it's such a long video, or you can just ask me the questions and I'll answer you. So hope you like it, and thank you to everyone who's watched it. Hope you guys like it too. You know what? Before I go, I want to show off the crystal chamber a little better, both the motor and the colors.
Welcome. Core
There you go.
stability at 93.138%.
I really like this spinning piece. It's a lot more solid than the Ray Master chassis, and I think it just looks way better.
Monitoring energy flux.
So the motor is actually wired up to the 4th color channel. So there's 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 over there. This is important to know because if you want to adjust the spin speed of this motor, you have to adjust the color channel 4 in the color config section, or in the color file in the config, or in the SD card. You adjust the 4th color channel, and that's what adjusts the speed. So if you raise the number, it makes it faster. If you lower the number, it makes it slower. So that's important to know. And then to change colors...
Core stability confirmed. Maintenance mode activated.
Quite loud.
Crystal core shielded. Goodbye.
There we go. But to change colors of the crystal, I think it's a little easier to move on to another sound font. So let me do that real quick. There we go.
Mute.
Ah, perfect. And then... okay, that didn't work out. So, to change the color, you basically hold the button down and twist. It's harder to do with the chassis here. There we go. You can see it's more yellow right now. More green. I'll try and keep this open for you. You basically twist and hold the button at the same time and it changes colors. And then you can just cycle in one direction or the other. We're now more in blue, purple. Oops. It's way easier to do with this inside of the hilt. But obviously you wouldn't be able to see the crystal. So there we go. We've cycled all the way through all of the colors. You've got blue, white, red, orange, yellow, green, all the colors. I'll just head right back to red here. It will reset itself if you turn it off and turn it on again, but just move it back. There we go. And with the standard fonts, it does have the same effects for turning on and turning off and idle, but it's much, much faster because each of the sound fonts are not as large as the Crystalline Workshop sound fonts. So just keep that in mind if you do want to change it. It's with the GraphX effects. It's very cool and very versatile. It's super fun if you get the hang of it. Anyways, that should be everything I want to show you. Okay, so this is the final thing I promise. I wanted to make sure you knew which direction the battery goes in so you don't fry anything, because I realized I forgot to show you how to put it in and take it out. And I'm going to show you how to access the SD card. So, the negative goes towards the speaker, the positive goes towards the NeoPixel, connector, the crystal, and the top of the lightsaber. So the negative towards the speaker, positive the other direction. You just put it in the negative side first, and then push it in. You do it negative side first because there's these little fins here that hold it in place. You can't really put the positive in and then the negative. These will block it. And then to take it out, you remove the soundboard cover. And then you can push either on the top part, once again, on the positive side, because those fins on the negative, and it'll come out like that. Or you can push down on this, which is what I like to do, and just boop, pop it out. So that's how it works. And then, to access the SD card, you have to remove both the battery and the soundboard cover. So remove the soundboard cover, remove the battery, and then the SD card is right at the bottom, as you can see. So I like to reach in, click it, it'll pop up, and then you can use 2 fingers here or tweezers to just grab it and pop it out. And you're all good. And then to put it back, you pretty much do the reverse. There you go. And boom, that's it. And I'll show you one more time. Click it, pull it out, and to put it back in, just guide it. And there you go. So that should be everything. And that really is the final thing I'm going to say about this lightsaber. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed checking out this Baylon Skoll Master Chassis. And if you want to see more videos like this about awesome lightsabers or building lightsabers, feel free to like and subscribe. And in case you guys forgot, if you want to contact me about a lightsaber commission, you can contact me on Instagram or my new website, averycastillo.com. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.